so much for being here this morning. My name is Kristen Judge, and I work with the National Cybersecurity Alliance, helping to educate folks around the country about being safe online. It's such a pleasure to be here at Iowa State University. We are doing a 10-city tour all around the country talking about two-factor authentication. And we chose Iowa State University specifically because of the fantastic programs you have here, led by Dr. Doug Jacobson, that is helping to educate young people about how to be cybersecurity experts. Our new workforce in cyber is going to be critical to our national security, and Iowa State University has a program like none other that I've seen, and you'll learn more about that later this morning. So it's really a pleasure to be here. We have some wonderful guests. We'll have some remarks from your Senator and Attorney General. Then we'll also have a presentation to teach you a little bit more about how to be safe online, and that'll follow up with a panel discussion. Right now I'm going to bring to the stage Dr. Stephen Leith. He became the 15th president of Iowa State University in January of 2012. And Iowa State has been nationally recognized as one of the most efficiently run universities in the country, and also one of the most beautiful campuses. I read that before I got here, and now I can see why. Really enjoyed our time here yesterday. Dr. Leith also co-chairs the Cultivation Corridor Regional Economic Development Initiative, and he's a member of the executive committee of the Iowa STEM Advisory Council. For those of you who don't know what STEM education is, it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Again, that theme for today is really getting young people excited about going into STEM education because we need them. Right now I'm going to bring Dr. Leith to the stage. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Good morning and welcome to Iowa State University for this very important and timely workshop on cybersecurity. Iowa State University has partnered with the National Cybersecurity Alliance and Google to highlight the significance and urgency of cybersecurity and explore ways that you can, as the title of this conference states, stay two steps ahead and protect your digital life. And the workshop is very timely for Iowa State University for a couple of reasons. The first being Iowa State was recognized again as having one of the nation's top cybersecurity programs, something we're very proud of. Our Information Assurance Center, led by Doug Jacobson, was named the National Center of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance and Cyber Defense Education. This designation comes from the NSA and the Department of Homeland Security and is based on the university's commitment to faculty research and overall program curriculum. And this designation is good for the next 7 years. I want to point out that Iowa State is the only university in the state of Iowa to receive this recognition. I think it's also important to note that the NSA was very, very quick to point out that higher education will be a key component of the solution to defending the country's cyberspace. And with our nationally recognized center, Iowa State will be at the forefront of that operation. The other reason for the timeliness of this conference is not quite as positive, but it does present some good and very necessary opportunities for this university. Back in the spring, we actually discovered a breach of 5 of our own campus servers. The servers contained social security numbers and university ID numbers for nearly 50,000 former students. Now, rest assured, there's no evidence at all that any of the files of social security numbers were accessed, and the ID numbers are not or used to anyone outside of campus. But this was very much a wake-up call for the university that despite our careful efforts, these things can happen. So it did prompt us to take a very, very good look at our information security protocols and ways we could improve them. We are now partnering with our own Information Assurance Center, tapping into the cybersecurity talent we had here on campus, and we're implementing a new 6-point plan to protect sensitive information anywhere it's stored on campus. I think this is a good lesson for us, a good example for other campuses. So we've started using identity detection software to find all the special protected information on campus servers, web pages, so we know exactly where the sensitive information is. We're reviewing our access to protected information in our central business systems to make sure only the appropriate people have access to this information. We're requiring stronger password standards on all our systems. We're encrypting our university-owned laptops. We're working more proactively to scan systems to fix software bugs and other vulnerabilities that are in the systems. And we're providing training and resources to Iowa State students, faculty, and staff about these types of information and cybersecurity. And that's really what today's workshop is all about. As more of our information becomes stored on computers, we have to be extremely careful about protecting it. These types of breaches are becoming an increasing issue in higher education and nearly all our industries in this country and across the world. The University of Maryland experienced a similar but more serious breach earlier this year. Another wake-up call to universities and other large institutions. And situations that have been in the public press, like at Target, have been another wake-up call. It's not just about protecting our email and social networking. It's about our bank accounts, credit cards, health and education information that is all likely to be stored on computers in this day and age. And so as our technology advances, so are the hackers. They're growing more and more sophisticated, so we have to do more and more to stay ahead of them and win this game. And any extra layer of security should give us more peace of mind. And I'm pleased to say today that we're very honored to have two leaders in statewide and national cybersecurity efforts here with us today. The first one I'd like to introduce is Senator Chuck Grassley. He's represented the state of Iowa on Capitol Hill since 1974 when he first won election to the House of Representatives, and he served in the Senate since 1980. He holds the Senate record for the longest stretch without missing a vote. He's led efforts in antitrust enforcement, tort reform, whistleblower protection, and increased transparency in the federal judiciary. He's also the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, whose role is to enact any new cybersecurity policies approved by Congress. Senator Grassley is known as one of the most tech-savvy members of the Senate. Losing our adjustment there. He's known as one of the most tech-savvy members of the Senate. He stays engaged with his constituents via email, Facebook, and Twitter, and he has his own website. He's built a strong reputation for staying connected with the people he represents. Please welcome Senator Chuck Grassley.
Those of us in politics ought to be intellectually honest, and so I'm going to just modify a little bit what he said. I'd like to limit my tech savvy to Twitter. Thank you for the kind introduction. And also thank you for the leadership that Iowa State University shows in so many areas, but particularly the one of interest here. And I'm glad to be with General Miller as well. I thank you all for this invitation to speak, and to speak about a very important and timely topic, as just this week one of the big boxes was announced as being hacked as well, following on Target and other ones as well. So it's an ongoing problem that we have to work with, and it has a great deal of criminal gain for the people that commit the crimes. The reality of today's world is that we share much, maybe too much, personal information online. It's a fact of life, and something most of us couldn't have imagined 15 or 20 years ago. Cyber criminals from here and abroad, and it seems like more abroad, seek to exploit the fact that so much information is shared electronically. A cyber criminal's goal is to stay one step ahead of the security measures implemented by both businesses and consumers, and it seems like they're very successful at doing that. Given all this, we must all be vigilant then in working to keep our online information secure. It's this simple. We can't take a break from trying to protect sensitive information, because the moment we do, we're in trouble. I appreciate the National Cybersecurity Alliance hosting this event and the other 9 events around the country. Today's event is important, and more events like this one are needed. Unfortunately, educating consumers about basic steps needed to better secure everyday online activities sometimes becomes an afterthought, too often an afterthought. We all expect businesses to protect our sensitive information, but we as consumers simply can't stick our head in the sand and assume that we don't also share some responsibility. The fact of the matter is that there are some simple steps that can be used to strengthen the security of online information. In many cases, even experienced users have neglected to take these basic steps. Today's seminar includes experts who will go into far greater detail about how we all can better protect our information. Rather than spend too much time on that aspect that you'll hear from real experts, I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss what we've been looking at and working on in the United States Senate. And I don't come here with this attitude, I'm from Washington and I'm here to help. I come here to just bring you up to date. And it may sound like I think government's a solution, but I believe that we're going to find private sector ahead of government, not only from the standpoint of accomplishing the goal, but also being ahead of the slow process of congressional decision making. So I'm going to share some of the things that we've learned as we tried to identify the government's role in cybersecurity. A major cyber attack could have a devastating effect on the U.S. economy and security, both economic and national. So without question, the government should prioritize working with the private sector to strengthen the security of personal information online. Earlier this year, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing to examine the high-profile data breaches that occurred for Target and Neiman Marcus. Some of you may have watched the hearing or even attended. It was an opportunity for us to revisit the issue and examine proposed legislation to address federal data security requirements and the need for a uniform national breach notification standard. As will be discussed throughout the day, we learned that there's no single solution that will prevent future cyber attacks. However, there are measures and advanced technology that can be implemented to make an attack more difficult and to limit the harm. We all recognize that businesses should have comprehensive security programs in place to protect sensitive information. And while consumers share an ongoing responsibility to do their very best to secure their information, businesses are no different. One example is a much-needed update in the payment card technology. This is an area where the United States has lagged far behind other countries. I'm glad to know that both financial institutions and retailers are in the process of updating this technology. Not only did the committee hearing provide information about specific breaches, but it gave committee members insight about the federal government's role in working with the private sector to strengthen data security. Currently, in the Senate, there are several proposals related to data security. When I say that, that doesn't detract from the statement that I previously made about government maybe being slow in making a decision, and thankfully, private sector trying to do all that they can to overcome the problem. But as I've studied the proposals and questioned experts, I've heard one consistent theme. Congress and the federal government must be careful to avoid an approach that fails to provide businesses flexibility, the flexibility they need to secure data in their specific situations. And also, a one-size-fits-all requirement rarely works, as it doesn't account for businesses of different sizes and resources. Just as there are problems with creating a top-down government-imposed regulatory scheme, I understand the criticism regarding and industry-only approach. As I've continued to examine the issue, it's been instructive to consider actions and proposals that have achieved both bipartisan and industry support. One approach is the public-private partnership that's developed under President Obama's executive order entitled Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. The President's executive order stated that strengthening cybersecurity can be achieved through government partnership with private enterprise. I agree wholeheartedly with that statement of the executive order. Following the issuance of the executive order, the National Institute of Standards and Technology worked to improve its partnership with owners of critical infrastructure. As a result, the private sector then came to the table with the government and worked to create standards, guidelines, and best practices for business to implement on a voluntary basis. This approach has received buy-in from the private sector along with strong bipartisan support in the United States Senate. That bipartisan support is best illustrated by Senator Rockefeller, a Democrat, and Senator Thune, a Republican, the chairman and ranking member of the Senate Commerce Committee, introducing a bill to enshrine the National Institute of Standards and Technology's role in creating a cybersecurity framework. Granted, this is just one model for government action focusing on securing critical infrastructure, but it's worth considering how a similar public-private partnership might work with regard to overall data security. Over the past several months, I've worked with the Judiciary Committee Chairman, Patrick Leahy, to try and craft bipartisan data security and breach notification legislation. We'll continue to work with each other and with stakeholders as well. And when I say work with stakeholders, that gives people that are in this audience and people not in the audience that have an opportunity to consult both Senator Leahy's staff and my staff or us personally for any suggestions you might have. But even as we work in Congress, businesses must stay vigilant to update their technologies and better educate consumers to ensure the security of sensitive information. The question isn't whether there will be another cyber attack or data breach. It's a question of only when it will happen. And you found that out this week again. So we need to have systems in place to prevent or limit the damage occurred. The criminals don't give up, and they do not take a break. We must be just as relentless as those criminals in securing our systems and our information. In closing, outside of the opportunities I've already given you to participate, I appreciate the opportunity of the Alliance bringing this topic before us and the opportunity to address you and give you the best update I can. And things move slowly in Congress. I wish I could give you an update on things moving faster in the private sector. More importantly, this Alliance effort in holding this event to raise this visibility, particularly with small business and consumers, is very important. So I thank the Alliance for a third time about educating people about basic measures that we can all take to protect our online activities. Thank you again.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Our next speaker is Iowa's Attorney General, Tom Miller. He is currently serving in his 8th four-year term as Iowa's Attorney General, and is in fact the longest-serving Attorney General in the country. He has a proven record of taking on the country's largest and most powerful special interest groups, and his office is nationally recognized for its consumer protection efforts. Attorney General Miller's office is also part of a multi-state group that's investigating the Target breach and several other national security breaches. He is instrumental in pushing for updates to the state's privacy breach law, and they were then approved this year by the legislature and Governor Branstad. Please welcome Attorney General Tom Miller, a leader in this area.
Thanks, President Leith, for that wonderful introduction, and thanks for your great work and leadership at Iowa State University. We've worked closely as lawyers for the president, and to see him close up and see him in the public sphere is very impressive. He's a man that takes his responsibilities very seriously, has great judgment, great work ethic, is willing to make decisions and take on tough issues, and for me, that's called leadership. Want to thank the National Cybersecurity Alliance and the other partners for putting this together and all their work. As Senator Grassley said, this problem that we're dealing with is not going to be solved by one solution or by one group. It's going to have to be a combination of efforts to deal with this set of issues, and the education part of it is a very, very important element of it. And we need this effort because of the nature of the problem. It's a nasty problem, a nasty abuse, and it's difficult to get at the people that are the perpetrators to some extent. And that's because, by and large, as Senator Grassley said, they're not in the United States. And they're in countries where it's hard to enforce the law. Russia, Eastern Europe, and other countries like that. It's a lot like the problems of enforcement in telemarketing fraud as it left the United States and went into foreign venues. And of course the Nigerian fraud scandals because of the difficulties of enforcing the laws in Nigeria. The perpetrators have somewhat of a safe haven to do all this harm. So that makes it all the more challenging, and that makes it all the more reasonable, and that we all work together and have different approaches to try and deal with it, including education. The attorney generals of this country, state attorney generals, work very closely together. It's a pretty remarkable group, frankly, of people that have similar responsibilities and similar obstacles. And it's a very bipartisan group. It's the most bipartisan group in the country in terms of elected officials. So we work very closely together. And one of the issues that we work on is cybersecurity, in particular the data breaches. The AGs have been at the forefront of trying to deal with that and trying to remedy it and try to deal with the education process. And I'm proud to say that Bill Brock, the head of our Consumer Protection Division, is one of the leaders in the state attorney general world on these set of issues. He's worked long and hard and developed expertise and developed, I think, respect among his colleagues to deal with these issues. We, of course, spent a lot of time on the Target issues that we're still dealing with to some extent. And then lo and behold, along comes Home Depot very recently. We did a press release just this morning asking people recommending to people that have been customers of Home Depot in the last 6 months, either in their stores or online, and using a credit card or a debit card as the first defense to grab all your bills in the last 6 months and go through each charge to make sure that they were your charges and not the result of some breach. We've also done recently a consumer protection advisory, which we do from time to time. In fact, it's the current one, September of this year, that deals with protecting your password. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot more this morning about that. But basically, to protect your password by not using common names, by using things that you can remember, maybe some formulas or first letters of a phrase, to really mix that up and make it much more difficult so people really can't guess or learn from other sources what your password might be. And we sort of had a reminder that is in the paper and the media recently about the actresses and the nude pictures. How if you use passwords that are fairly common, including names that if you're famous might be in the news, a maiden name or your parents, your mother's maiden name, that it can be easy to hack in. So that is our timely advisory for September of 2014. As President Leith mentioned, we've worked hard on the legislative front with legislation in 2008, and then amended and updated again this year to deal with the data breaches and to put the proper authority in the Attorney General's office to deal with this, among other things. You know, it's a complicated world we live in. It's a wonderful world in a lot of ways. We have a lot of opportunities, and we have a lot of mechanisms and things we can use and enjoy. But as it gets more complicated, the ability to do fraud and to abuse the system becomes greater. So the efforts that we make in really sort of a broad coalition to make it safer and make it more difficult to abuse the system is really important. And you know, I think nobody is better than Iowans to understand and to work together and to push back against things that shouldn't happen. So I'm glad that you chose Iowa State and Iowa for this conference. I think we do have that sort of common sense and common purpose to do things together on the education front, on the enforcement front, on the legislative front, in the private sector playing just a very important role in all of this. You know, it's the way it should be. And I think this conference will be a real indication of how it can be, how it can happen, and you know how we do things here in Iowa. And again, my great thanks to the National Cybersecurity Alliance and the other partners for putting this together. I know it took a good deal of work to put all this together, but it's times very, very well spent. And you know, thank you for the audience for coming. I understand this is the biggest crowd you've had for one of these meetings, and no better place than Iowa, the state of Iowa, and Iowa State University to have that happen. So thanks to everybody that's here.
Thank you so much to the Senator, Attorney General, President Lee. Thank you so much for being here today.